Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are strapping in for a pretty high-stakes journey.
Mhm.
We're going right into a world where high-level Washington politics meets just explosive family secrets.
And a literal fight for survival. This is
Yeah.
not just a political thriller. It's really a story about a marriage being forged, or maybe reforged, in an absolute crucible of a crisis.
It really is. Our source material lays out this incredibly compelling narrative. It centers on Cady and Senator Rafe Densmore.
And their life, his career, their relationship, everything is threatened at the exact same time.
Yeah, you're looking at one of the most intense forms of pressure imaginable. Paralysis, a political conspiracy, and just this toxic family dynamic all hitting at once.
It's a perfect storm.
So our mission today is pretty clear. We're going to meticulously trace Cady's extraordinary transformation.
She really does transform. She starts as, a fairly fragile, almost insecure wife who's estranged from her powerful husband.
And she becomes a political force. The source literally calls her a tiger.
And she has to be. She's not only serving as Rafe's proxy in the Senate, but she is orchestrating the takedown of a very sophisticated blackmail ring.
A ring that involves some seriously powerful figures and, disturbingly, members of her own extended family.
Yeah, this is a classic crucible narrative,
Yeah.
the external threat, the whole political conspiracy. It forces the internal resolution of years of personal distrust and insecurity.
Right. So we'll be unpacking the immense medical and ethical gambles Cady had to take.
A family dynamics that almost guaranteed she would fail.
And this clever, almost spy-like investigation that she puts together to save Rafe's political and personal future.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Let's unpack this. We begin at the absolute lowest point, the nadir. The entire story really pivots on one catastrophic event. 5 months before our narrative truly kicks off, Senator Rafe Densmore, he's the junior senator from New York, was severely injured.
Right, his Learjet crashed. It was on its way to Dura, which is his father's big Maryland estate.
And the crash was devastating. The pilot was killed instantly.
And Rafe's injuries were catastrophic. A broken back, specifically. A vertebra was pressing on his spinal column.
Which resulted in total paralysis from the neck down.
But on top of that physical trauma, there was something else, something almost more psychologically destructive.
His vocal cords were injured.
Exactly.
That is just an agonizing detail. I mean, imagine being 6'2", this vital, charismatic politician.
And suddenly you can't move or speak. He was essentially locked inside his own body.
A man of action, totally reduced to silence.
And his communication was just agonizingly slow. It was all down to blinks. 1 for yes, 2 for no.
For Cady, just watching him struggle, the medical outlook must have been crushing.
Oh, it was. The doctors initially held very little hope for any kind of recovery for the spinal injury. This wasn't a short-term problem. This was looking like a life sentence.
So when hope finally does arrive, it's not in a conventional package at all.
No. It comes in the form of a radical medical specialist, Dr. Kelman.
And Dr. Kelman recommends something pretty extreme.
A radical experimental laser surgery. And this is the moment where Cady, who had just been a wife, an observer,
Right.
she has to become the singular decision maker, and she has to risk everything.
Let's just pause on that risk for a moment, because this is where Cady takes her first monumental life and death gamble.
Fusing multiple pressure points on the spinal column is incredibly complex.
The source material says she confirmed it had been successful elsewhere, but the risk profile for Rafe, given his injuries.
It was through the roof. The ethical and personal dilemma here is immense. Conventional therapy had failed.
So her options were what? Accept the paralysis and watch him decline?
Pretty much. Or take this radical option. It offered the only plausible hope for a full recovery, a return to mobility.
But at the potential cost of his life.
Exactly. And Cady chose the riskier, higher reward path, and she had to act decisively.
And in absolute secrecy. Which begs the question, why couldn't she tell Rafe's powerful family?
Because she knew they would stop her. The need for deception was immediate and absolute.
Emmett Densmore, Rafe's father.
A ruthless banker. And his assistant, Bruno Trabold. They had a history of manipulating Rafe's life for their own gain.
So Cady just knew, she assessed correctly, that Emmett's need for control would completely supersede any concern for Rafe's potential recovery.
So Cady, this fragile wife, she has to become a political operator overnight just to get her husband the medical care he needs.
She sets up this secret helicopter transfer, telling the nursing home staff it was just for a meeting.
That level of deception against the patriarch, I mean, it's not just high-handed. It's an act of pure defiance. She's drawing a line in the sand between herself and the Densmore empire.
And we see the fallout from that immediately.
Oh, yeah. When Emmett finally confronts her, his eyes are described as blazing with wrath. He doesn't ask if the surgery worked.
No, he threatens her. He tells her menacingly that if Rafe dies, his death will be on your head.
That is the kind of pressure she was operating under.
And yet, in the middle of this terrifying scenario, she assembles her own support team, a team defined entirely by loyalty.
Starting with Albert Trock.
Trock is a fascinating character. He was Rafe's male nurse, his attendant.
Described as strong, phlegmatic, and just deeply dedicated to Rafe. Crucially, Cady trusted him, and his actions proved that trust was well placed.
Trock risked his entire livelihood for Cady. Emmett Densmore had him fired from the nursing home.
Fired for lying about where Rafe was and for helping Cady with that secret transfer.
That's absolute dedication. And what did Cady do?
Hired him back immediately. She hired him directly to run Rafe's recovery program at home.
And his commitment, it went beyond just medical care. They played chess.
A silent mental contest. Rafe would blink his moves. This kept his brilliant mind engaged while his body was failing him.
It's a remarkable image. The powerful senator reduced to blinking, battling intellectually with his attendant.
And as we find out later, Trock was so much more than a nurse. He was a former Marine Corps air photographer, a specialist in surveillance.
Cady, maybe without even realizing it, just hired her first intelligence operative.
And that military background makes him the perfect asset for everything that's coming. He's loyal, he's resourceful, he's capable of covert action.
But the team wasn't complete without Rafe's ultimate morale booster.
Graf, the Doberman Pinscher.
Graf was an outsider too, wasn't he? A rescue dog.
Yeah, a rescue Cady found near Lake Cayuga. She named him Graf, which means count, for his dignity.
And Rafe insisted, through blinks, that the dog be with him.
Graf was more than just a pet. He was this highly protective presence, a constant source of unconditional loyalty in a house filled with human treachery.
And that dog's instinctual protection becomes critical later on.
It does. It's fascinating, right? The paralysis forces Cady to rely only on the fiercely loyal, the outsiders, the discarded Trock, the fired nurse, and Graf, the rescue dog.
While Rafe's own powerful family immediately becomes the adversary, it's a complete reversal of their expected roles.
And this crisis immediately thrusts Cady right into the center of the political and familial storm.
Right. With Rafe incapacitated, a decision had to be made about his Senate seat.
And the first major decision, Rafe communicates through blanks, is to insist that the governor appoint Cady as the interim senator.
That had to have been a shockwave. I mean, Cady had a political science minor. She met the minimum age of 30, but
she had zero actual political experience. This move was a brazen assertion of control by the incapacitated Rafe.
And it was an incredible power move. Cady herself was pretty cynical about his motives, wasn't she?
Deeply cynical. She wondered if it was genuine trust or if it was just, cynical ambition.
A way to keep the Densmore name active, assuming she'd give the seat back to him more easily than some career politician.
Exactly. And the person most offended by this, the man who becomes the central antagonist.
Bruno Trabold.
Bruno had lobbied hard for that seat, with Emmett's full backing. His contempt for Cady, who he saw as this amateur usurper, was just palpable.
He saw her as a personal insult, a disruption to the political machine he and Emmett had built around Rafe.
And the source material is so evocative of his hostility, it was just venomous.
He gives her what's called a polar ice cap smile.
Chillingly polite, but dripping with resentment. He mocks her title, speculating she'd run for Rafe's seat if he died.
What if he's not around to be reelected in November, acting Senator Densmore, just actively preying on her insecurities?
And that contempt was completely reinforced by the family patriarch, Emmett Densmore,
who had never accepted Cady.
Emmett was a study in pure ruthlessness. He wasn't just critical, he was openly insulting. He told her Rafe needed a strong woman like Lee Terrace, not a cream puff like you.
So he's actively driving a wedge between them, capitalizing on years of existing estrangement.
And let's talk about that estrangement, because that is the crucial emotional vulnerability that Bruno later exploits.
It started 5 years prior. Cady refused to accept Emmett's social circle and their sleazy money-making schemes.
Right. Which Rafe, bound by family obligation and political necessity, felt he had to consider. She wanted moral clarity. He needed political pragmatism. That was the split.
And then there was the enduring shadow of Rafe's past that Bruno so cleverly manipulated.
The Dura parties. This was the source of Cady's deepest insecurity.
Before they were married, Rafe, as a freshman congressman, hosted a party at Dura.
And a scandal broke involving a bevy of notorious call girls.
And while Rafe may not have participated, his silence about it and the fact that he kept going to Dura, it fueled Cady's suspicion that he was still living this wild playboy life.
And this is the critical point. Bruno, as Emmett's intimate assistant, was perfectly positioned to maintain that emotional distance between them.
Dropping vague hints about Rafe's past.
Exactly. Cady's pride and her love stopped her from confronting Rafe directly. She didn't want to seem jealous or suspicious.
But it left an open wound. She was operating as his loyal political proxy while secretly fearing he would divorce her once he recovered.
Terrified of being discarded, especially after he'd moved into a separate bedroom years ago.
And the rest of the family certainly wasn't helping.
Not at all. There was a clear division. The twins, Gareth and Gavin, were genuinely supportive. They visited Rafe regularly.
They're described as top drawer.
Yes, even with Gareth's flippant humor. They represented the genuine, caring side of the family.
And then you have the sisters, Aileen and Aveen.
The embodiment of the judgmental Maryland society set. The snobs. They were obsessed with decorum over the actual crisis.
They openly questioned Cady's judgment about the surgery, citing their own surgeon friends who called it very revolutionary and not positively safe.
Implying her decision was reckless and high-handed.
My favorite detail, the one that perfectly captures the absurdity of their priorities, is Aveen's little piece of advice.
Oh, yes. The utterly ridiculous and petty comment. Cady, dear, I do so wish you wouldn't sit around with your mouth open. So declassed, don't you see?
I mean, here's Cady fighting for her husband's life, navigating political assassination attempts.
And her sister-in-law is worried about her lack of aristocratic poise. It's just... It underscores the moral void.
But it was Rafe, still recovering, who had to step in.
Yeah, he mocked his sisters, telling Cady to make a note to remind him to tell her not to sit with her mouth open.
It's a sign that even in that minimal state, he was already protecting her from his family's toxicity.
And this whole complex web, the political appointment, the family contempt, the marital insecurity, it made Cady the absolute ideal, vulnerable target for an attack.
So the crisis forced Rafe to really confront his own political principles. Before the crash, he was very much influenced by his father, Emmett.
But after the accident, his priorities shifted dramatically. He moved towards the environmental agenda Cady had been championing.
This transformation is so crucial. The paralysis stripped away his ability to be a political pragmatist. He had to focus on ideals.
And he became fully committed to the environmental bills Cady had researched, specifically rejecting his father's pressure to support Silas Greeley's nuclear power plant plans.
And he didn't just reject it quietly. He based his rejection on Cady's own research, citing the damage to wildlife and exposing the sordid profit motive.
And when Emmett called Cady a half-baked girl, Rafe defended her fiercely.
This was his true political emancipation from his father.
It was. And by backing that agenda, he became an immediate and dangerous enemy to the powerful interests tied up in that energy deal.
Which is precisely when the retaliation hit Cady.
And the attack wasn't political. It was brutally personal.
Cady receives an unmarked package. The blackmail plot is delivered.
Inside are these highly compromising, fake nude photographs of her, alone in provocative poses, and then, shockingly, with two other men.
Congressman Rob Ardmore, her left-wing buddy helping with the bills, and Todd Leacock, her college ex.
The goal was pure destruction. The note with them threatened to send them to Day magazine unless Cady forced Rafe to abandon the environmental bill.
The genius of the attack was its layered vulnerability. It hit her political credibility.
And her personal insecurity. It reopened the wound of her relationship with her cheating ex and played right into the family whispers about her character.
So Cady immediately moves to identify the source, and the trail leads right back to her past.
Todd Leacock, her ex from college. When Cady later speaks to him, he confirms the demands are financial, and they're driven by this deep-seated class resentment.
He actually says it, doesn't he? Why should you have so much and I have so little?
Yeah. He felt entitled to sabotage her.
But this wasn't just Leacock. Who were the real puppet masters?
The conspiracy was centered on Bruno Trabold and Silas Greeley. Rob Ardmore's informant confirmed they were equal partners in the massive Hudson River land deal.
A deal that absolutely required that nuclear plant to proceed.
And Bruno's motive was the true toxic core. It wasn't just the money. It was deep, consuming, personal jealousy of Rafe.
His money, his prestige, his miraculous recovery.
He saw the blackmail as his last, best chance to sabotage Rafe and finally usurp his power base.
It's personal spite driving corporate corruption, the most dangerous kind.
And before Cady even launches her full counter-investigation, we get this remarkable raw moment of action that fully realizes her transformation into a tiger.
The dogfighting incident?
A crucial symbolic interlude. Cady meets Ruth Proctor, whose bull terrier, Max, is being stolen for illegal pit fighting by her brother-in-law.
And Cady, in jeans, not her senatorial clothes, goes with Ruth to confront them.
This was pure, uncompromising moral fury. She doesn't call the police, she intervenes directly. She breaks up the fight by turning a powerful fire hose on the men and the dogs.
He ends up covered in mud, but she stops it.
And this scene just cements her character arc. She's fighting for the abused, whether it's a senator or a bull terrier, and Rafe arrives.
And ignoring his still recovering spine, he just launches himself into the fight, tackling the guy.
That moment is so powerful. It shows his physical healing is succeeding, and his commitment to action is absolute.
And Cady's act of defiance leads to another meaningful adoption.
Yes, she adopts Hobo, another bull terrier from the barn, scarred and used for fighting. Hobo, the rescued fighting dog, he parallels her own new role.
Fighting corruption and protecting those who can't fight for themselves.
And with the stakes raised and her moral clarity established, she formalizes her counter-investigation team.
Relying on her newfound loyalists, first, Congressman Rob Ardmore.
Her political ally, the one she was falsely pictured with. He provides key intelligence, but also acts as a sounding board. He even admits he loves her and encourages her to divorce Rafe.
But the real asset was Trock, the nurse.
The strong, silent attendant becomes a Black Ops operative.
His background as a Marine Corps photographer proved invaluable. He photographed Leacock and Bruno meeting visual proof.
And successfully placed a miniature recorder in Leacock's car, gathering crucial audio evidence.
And finally, she strategically recruited Stacy Land,
her new secretary, who she'd hired away from Bruno's office.
And Stacy provided the critical operational and historical context.
She confirmed that Bruno and Greeley organized political galas with prostitutes to gain leverage. She even had copies of Bruno's little black book.
But the most vital piece of information Stacy provided wasn't about the villains, it was about Rafe.
Yes. Stacy assured Cady, directly contradicting Bruno's years of manipulative whispers, that Rafe had stopped any hanky-panky long before he even met Cady. He was so ashamed of that original Dura scandal.
That moment of confirmation, it just stripped away years of Cady's insecurity. It gave her the emotional foundation of absolute trust she needed for the final fight.
She finally realized the root of their estrangement wasn't Rafe's guilt, but Bruno's calculated lies.
The tension really reaches its peak when Rafe finds out about Cady's secret investigation.
He overhears her talking to Rob Ardmore, which briefly sparks his old suspicion.
Which shows that lingering emotional distance. He was angry she hadn't come to him first. That element of distrust still stung.
But once she showed him the fake pictures and played Trock's audio recording of Bruno and Leacock, his determination just took over.
He was completely calm. He immediately recognized the scope of the attack.
And he delivered that crucial line. Submitting to blackmail would lead to a never-ending cycle of destruction. The only option was to fight back and expose them.
And Rafe's counterplan was not just cunning, it was a PR masterpiece. It neutralized the power of the shame and secrecy the blackmailers were relying on.
It was brilliantly absurd. Rafe and his staff, with Cady's network, contacted the wives of other politicians, women who were either targeted by Greeley or who supported the environmental agenda.
And they convinced these women to participate in a counterfraud campaign.
They offered to superimpose their heads onto the exact same provocative bodies in the fake photos.
And the source says they were immediately buried in volunteers.
The psychological genius of this is profound. If Bruno published the originals of Cady, Rafe would instantly release dozens of identical, obviously faked photos of prominent, respectable political wives.
It would prove the photo manipulation was a sham. It turns a tool of destruction into a universal joke and a sign of collective resistance.
So the stage for the trap was set. And where else but the site of Rafe's original shame? Emmett's annual Christmas party at Dura.
It was pure political theater. Emmett, ever the stickler, demanded everyone wear red or green.
A rule Cady symbolically defied by wearing a dramatic, deep, chocolate-brown silk dress.
Rafe gathered everyone, the supporters, the family, and the unsuspecting conspirators, Bruno, Greeley, Leacock, in Emmett's library.
And the environment was tightly controlled. The team was deployed.
This is where we see the final, crucial role of the outsiders.
Trock brought Graff and Hobo to the party. Graf, the Doberman, was commanded to block Bruno from escaping.
And Hobo, the rescued bull terrier, stood guard, mouth snarling, in front of Leacock. The dogs acted as the physical enforcers of justice.
And the reveal was just magnificent. Rafe displayed the corkboard of fake pictures, turning the tables on them in front of everyone.
But how did he provide the definitive, irrefutable proof they were fakes?
He used the most intimate detail possible. Cady's most interesting mole, a feature known only to him and their family friend, Professor Nesbitt.
So he points out that any real photo of Cady would have that specific subtle feature. Its absence was the public proof.
And that detail? It served a dual purpose. It was a political assassination of the plotters.
And an ultimate, intimate affirmation of his fidelity to Cady in front of his entire family and the political establishment.
The plot just instantly collapsed. Greeley, seeing the trap, immediately betrayed Bruno, claiming Bruno masterminded the whole thing.
The partnership dissolved instantly under pressure.
And Bruno, seeing his life's work and his revenge just unravel, flew into a rage and physically launched himself at Rafe.
This was the moment of complete truth for Rafe's recovery.
Despite Cady's terror, Rafe fought back. He didn't just survive the attack, he utterly won the confrontation. He proved his full physical and mental sovereignty.
Exclaiming afterward, "I feel so damn good."
And then Cady delivered the final, devastating piece of evidence.
She revealed that Bruno and Leacock had also tried to blackmail Rafe's twin brother Gareth with false accusations of point shaving in a college game.
And that was the final straw for Emmett.
He didn't care about Cady's reputation, but his own protege betraying his sons. That was unacceptable.
Rafe fired Bruno on the spot. Emmett, furious, vowed to punish Bruno himself.
And the political victory had these profound repercussions throughout the family. Rafe's brothers-in-law, even the snobbish sisters, Aileen and Evine.
They all showed a newfound unity and respect. The external threat of Bruno effectively purged the internal toxicity.
The exposure of the plot and the defeat of Bruno and Greeley, that was the political victory. But the true prize was the profound personal reconciliation between Rafe and Cady.
Right. The crisis served as a fire that just burned away years of accumulated distrust.
Cady had struggled with the ghost of the wild playboy for years, all fueled by Bruno's whispers.
And in the aftermath, Rafe confesses his love and makes this ironclad emotional denial. I was never unfaithful to you.
He admitted that his emotional distance in the early years stemmed from his own insecurity. He was afraid to trust her love because she was so young when they married.
But the paralysis had clarified everything for him. He shared what sustained him through that living hell.
It was the memory of Cady's devotion, specifically the moment when she quoted those beautiful, resonant lines from W.B. Yeats.
Let's talk about that Yeats quote, because it's the thematic anchor of the entire story.
"I have spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams."
That quote was everything. For Rafe, who had been politically compromised, constantly under his father's thumb, Cady's words were a promise that she would respect his ideals, his potential.
He said he looked up the full poem as soon as he could use his hands again.
Her commitment to his dreams was the ultimate sign of her mature, unwavering love. It contrasted so sharply with the manipulations of his father and Bruno.
And with the distrust gone, Rafe made a clear pledge for their future.
He promised, "You'll never have reason to be ashamed of me again as a husband," and committed fully to ensuring her happiness. The crisis forced them to be rawly honest.
And the final, beautiful piece of their new life was revealed soon after. After she had severe morning sickness, they found out Cady was pregnant.
This was a miracle. It underscores the healing they'd undergone. They had struggled for years, stopping birth control after their 5th year, unable to conceive during their estrangement.
The pregnancy was born directly out of the crisis and the reconciliation that followed.
And Rafe's immediate reaction shows his total emotional shift. He became this doting caregiver, canceling work, indulging her craving for ice-cold orange juice.
He was completely captivated. He insisted their physical intimacy continue, citing the doctor.
Right, who said all normal activity is acceptable, and he humorously claimed they were wearing each other out. They were fully recapturing the joy that had been lost for years.
And they immediately started debating the baby's appearance, a wonderfully intimate detail. Rafe hoped for a girl with Cady's striking violet eyes.
And Cady countered, wanting a boy with dark chocolate hair. That immediate connection to the future just emphasized how firmly anchored their relationship now was.
And Rafe, eager to seal this renewed commitment, planned a secluded trip to Santo Tomas.
The island where they originally got engaged, Just the two of them, after all Christmas party tumult.
And 6 months later, their son, Rafe Densmore, was born.
And he was the perfect synthesis. Dark hair for Cady and blue eyes, reflecting his father.
Cady's final reflection on the whole journey just summarizes it perfectly. She had indeed tread softly on Rafe's dreams.
And in return, Rafe, now fully committed and healthy, had made all of hers come true.
What an incredible deep dive. Political survival, personal transformation, marital purification, the whole narrative just clearly demonstrates that Cady's fight to save Rafe's life, starting with that secret surgery,
Was intrinsically linked to her fight to save his ideals and ultimately the core of their relationship.
Yeah, that high-stakes political threat served as an indispensable crucible. It systematically exposed the true manipulative character of his adversaries.
Bruno's jealousy, Greeley's corporate greed, and at the same time it revealed the true, deeply loving, and fundamentally honest character of Rafe himself.
We learned that Cady's actions, which looked high-handed to the family, were not reckless. They were entirely necessary for his survival.
And her sudden immersion in the Senate, it didn't weaken Rafe's career. It fortified his platform and forced him to stand up to his father.
The final victory was achieved because Cady found the strength to trust her husband completely. She used her intellectual prowess and her loyal team Trock, Ardmore, Stacy, to fight a battle that was both deeply emotional and fiercely political.
She managed to turn Rafe's greatest vulnerability, his paralysis, into the source of their greatest strength, absolute commitment.
So we'll leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over. Cady spent years feeling estranged, believing Bruno's calculated hints about Rafe's playboy past. Bruno used that insecurity as the weak point to launch his plot.
Right.
So if Cady had trusted Rafe implicitly from the start, she might have confronted Bruno earlier, maybe avoiding the blackmail altogether.
But on the other hand, if she hadn't spent those years focused on political issues to escape her marital problems, she wouldn't have had the political knowledge or the allies she needed to destroy the conspirators.
So did Cady's initial lack of trust, that fear born of insecurity, actually leave her vulnerable to the plot?
Or did her deep, compensatory knowledge of his political ideals give her the precise tools she needed to achieve not just survival, but total victory and complete marital reconciliation?
It's that constant tension between emotional vulnerability and intellectual strength that defines her entire journey. Something to think about as you navigate your own deep dives this week. We'll see you next time.